We're one of the longest serving carbon credit providers. We've been around since 2004. I have to watch myself because if you use the industry terms too much, carbon credits, voluntary carbon markets, all this stuff, you kind of lose the point. And in this industry, it's all about the projects. It's just these projects around the world that are reducing carbon emissions every day, doing a lot of other good stuff like the nature-based projects that are like protecting ecosystems and species. When you look at the projects, that's what energizes people.
Welcome to the Intergenius Podcast with Joe Patch IV.
I want to welcome everyone to another episode of the Intergenius Podcast. I'm very excited today to have my guest, Sam Telleen, with us today. He is the President and Chief Operating Officer over at Terrapass. Sam, thanks for making time to come on with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Look forward to talking with you.
Excellent. Me too. So let's get kicked off. Maybe kind of take it from the beginning. How did you kind of get to where you are today? I mean, we're going to talk about Terrapass, obviously some of the work that you guys do, but what was your journey in kind of getting to where you are at this moment?
Yeah, that's a big question. So I'll try to filter that down. But, honestly, I grew up in Denver. I guess I grew up around the world, being outdoors and it kind of a beautiful environment. And I kind of came to appreciate the world around us and how important that is to people. And also, kind of had just a sense of also really kind of learning about myself and wanting to build things in my life and in my career. And I've always had this career journey of trying to bring something together where I can be part of building something that is hopefully good for the planet. And so I have taken I think that philosophy and I've tried to explore that in a variety of areas throughout my life and through my career and a lot of steps along the way. Those were learnings where I tried some things that weren't aligned with that, and I really learned from it. And when I found the things that aligned to it, it really clicked, and I just kept going down that path. So there were several steps for me, and I think the big learning I took away from that was just being really persistent to your finding out your personal career goals, and you may find yourself in spots where you're doing something that you thought was good may not align with that, and just making sure you're patient and persistent in achieving what you want to achieve.
Yeah. I think it's great advice, though. It's interesting you say that. It kind of reminds me. I gave a talk down at the University of Arkansas to the College of Engineering. They're doing a symposium, and wanted people to come in and talk about. So I said, well, this is great. I've got the audience of some grad students, some seniors, juniors, about ready to launch, and we talked about that sort of personal career goals, and we talked about it in a way that, as a matter of fact, I don't think we've dropped that video on social yet. But basically, the way I kind of came at it was, there needs to be sort of a constant measurement because as you get older, as things change, perspective changes a little bit. What you thought was possible, or maybe some of the things you wanted have changed, and that's okay. Those could be for lots of good reasons. But I think some people, they kind of embark on that like step one, day one, and this is where it needs to be a straight line in 10 years. And it's like, yeah, you may get to your goal, but it's going to be crooked, typically. And I like the fact how you said you tried things and leaned into them and they didn't work. But then when there were other things that clicked, and I'm wondering if the clicking was a result of doing different things and seeing what worked and what didn't work that helped you arrive at that. Yeah, this is where I want to be. This is the kind of work I want to do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And especially it started my career in business consulting, and I think especially when you're young, you look to the world and look to other examples of success and say, hey, maybe I should do that. And I got into energy consulting, energy business consulting, and loved it for understanding the energy environment and the whole framework of the industry. But really, when I did work related to clean tech and energy innovation, just the next level of excitement and energy for me behind that. And so that I definitely recognized that. Went back to grad school and did a little work in chemical engineering, and at the time really worked with some grad students on hydrogen and fuel cells. And that's a long time ago.
Nice.
And we're just adamant. Yeah, we got to get into fuel cells and hydrogen, and unfortunately, at the time, it was just a very, very nascent industry. There wasn't a lot going on, and so to see what's happening in hydrogen today, I'm like, wow, when did this happen? So But it was
That's great.
good. Yeah, that experience was great. And I continued to pursue that all the way through business school, and eventually got into the clean tech industry. A few years later.
Well, I appreciate you kind of piggybacking on that, because the other thought, the nugget I took away, is there's sort of a graduation process. I mean, you found energy and you knew something about energy was right. And then the more you spent time with it, the idea of clean tech sort of crystallized even clearer, is this is, the tip of the pin that I really want to focus on. And you have your reasons why, which I think, as a entrepreneur and as a business owner, that you need those reasons why to push you through on the hard days to keep you coming back, because there are ups and downs, as you know. But that's great. I mean, I love your story. I think to me, it's just raw. It's very real, and very objective. I think that's how people do end up getting to that place where, on the outside looking in, oh, you got lucky or you fell into the right spot. And it's like, no, it was a journey. It has its ups and downs, good days, bad days. But I know, because it's been tested, I'm in the right spot. And 9 out of 10 gays are great. I love doing what I'm doing. So that's what's wonderful. I love it. It's funny you mentioned about hydrogen too, because I had Mike Hopkins on the show over there from Plus Power, and we were talking about hydrogen and really what a great market it is to get into, as an aside, because there hasn't been a ton done. And I mean, you can get into it fairly young. You could spend 3 to 5 years, and you're approaching kind of expert status at a rapid rate. There's just not people out there that have done 20 hydrogen projects, 5 of them green, with 37 years of experience. That guy doesn't exist. So there's a wonderful ramp and opportunity, I think, particularly in hydrogen. But to your point, the whole space, I think, is ripe, is very, very ripe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little. No, go ahead, please. Yeah, piggyback. Go ahead.
Oh no, and it's interesting though, because as you look at and I've worked in a variety of clean technology areas, and hydrogen, like you said, is still very early stage, and it's one of those areas where there's a lot of demand for it right now, and it is happening, but it's still an area where nobody's really doing it yet, right? Everybody's trying to build the projects, the technology's but it's so early stage. And it's interesting. It does take a while to get technologies into place, get them working, get them scaled. So it's a really fun time to be in the hydrogen industry, but it's definitely in its infancy for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, there is still maturation that needs to happen before scale is going to be, I would say, massively achievable, at least in the United States anyway. I think particularly in a green hydrogen, as opposed to some of the other colors. Yeah, talk to us. I want to hear a little more, about Terrapass. So let's talk to me about, what are some of the things that, not only that you're doing as part of the company, but, the objectives, the initiatives, some of the problems you're trying to tackle in the space today.
Yeah, I'll give you a little broad approach to that. But so Terrapass, for background, we're one of the longest serving carbon credit providers. We've been around since 2004. But I have to watch myself, because if you use the industry terms too much, carbon credits, voluntary carbon markets, all this stuff, you kind of lose the point. And in this industry, it's all about the projects. It's just these projects, around the world, that are reducing carbon emissions every day, doing a lot of other good stuff, like, the nature-based projects that are like protecting ecosystems and species. When you look at the projects, you really, that's what energizes people, and that's what reminds people what we're doing. And so Terrapass, we're committed to bringing these projects forward. We were originally started back in Wharton Business School, a business school class, got together and said, hey, maybe somebody, maybe individuals would like to use carbon credits to offset their driving. And that was a little revolutionary. At the time, only the big corporates could go buy carbon credits. They just weren't accessible to most people. And in a lot of ways, that's still true. The industry is still very big corporate focused. And Terrapass, our focus is really trying to bring the world's best carbon reduction projects to everybody, to individuals, to businesses. And so we have a very big network of developers and project developers and operators that we work with. And our goal is that, whoever comes to us, we're going to have a project that is meaningful to their sustainability goals, impactful to climate. And so Terrapass has been a pretty fun opportunity to jump onto.
That's super exciting. So back at the Wharton School, that's University of Pennsylvania, right? Interesting, interesting. And how long has that been around now? Is it, you said 2000?
It's our 20-year anniversary. I should say that automatic these days.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. Congratulations. I mean, that's a hell of an achievement, you know? I mean, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really impressive. So I mean, who would your typical clients be? I mean, when you say project developers, operators, who's coming to you and engaging your services and saying, "Hey, this is what we're looking for, advice, guidance, consulting on."
Yeah, it's going to be, let's see. So it could be as simple as an individual who says, "Hey, I'm worried about climate change. I have a carbon footprint and I just want to do something about it."
Okay.
And they can come to Terrapass and sign on, and it could be as much as a major corporation who comes to us and says, "Hey, I want to fund carbon reduction projects as part of our broader sustainability strategy."
Okay.
The fundamentals in sustainability and climate action right now are basically eliminate the emissions everywhere you can eliminate them, and then
Hmm.
balance what you can eliminate with carbon credits. And so we're working with a lot of corporate sustainability teams on how to do that, what kind of projects are meaningful. A lot of this industry is really moving towards a much more customized, much more transparent solution where
Interesting.
a carbon credit is not a carbon credit is not a carbon credit. We are finding projects that resonate with the company, with their customers. It might be, the location of the project, the type of project. And it's really about creating a sustainability story through these projects that our customers can really get excited about.
Are they looking to your customers looking to invest in projects that are mitigating carbon? Are they looking at taking on for their own initiatives, looking at as they expand, whether it be geographically or they want to, increase the size of their facility, they're looking to do it in a creative way? Is it a little bit of both?
So we are purely focused on what I would call kind of global emission reduction. So
Okay.
there are two sources. You have your personal your business's carbon emissions
Okay.
in your value chain, and those are going to be your carbon footprint.
Right. Okay.
And these voluntary carbon projects, they're basically, projects all over the world that have nothing to do with your corporate footprint, but they
Okay.
are reducing carbon emissions every day. And they purely exist to reduce carbon emissions. And so
Interesting.
uh, yeah, what a business is doing is saying, I've got these significant carbon emissions I can't do anything about. I want to balance those by funding carbon reductions over here.
Okay.
And the goal is over time, as you transition to zero emission technologies,
Right.
hopefully the need for carbon credits becomes less and less.
Right.
But the need in the short term is fairly urgent to prevent, runaway carbon emissions in the short term.
Oh, that's really fascinating. Okay, so I mean, basically, you're looking to offset
Yes.
in another capacity. And the fact that you mentioned the word global, I take that to mean you could look to invest in anything, anywhere, essentially. I mean, we're all on the same planet, and I guess that's kind of the arbitrator at the end of the day. And that's really fascinating. I haven't heard of this. And so would you so when you sit down with the different clients, are you trying to get a feel for kind of who they are, what they are, what I mean, yeah, you could talk about the mission statement, their value statements and all that, but are you trying to help align them with a technology that really kind of fits who they are, that they can sort of get behind somewhat emotionally, as opposed to just we want to invest in it because it's kind of a trade, a one for one, as far as
That's right.
reducing.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll
Okay.
work with them, and what's really important in I think in this industry right now and in climate action is it's not a transaction, and that's not the kind of solution we provide. For us, it's about being a kind of a climate advisor, a part of
Yeah.
our customers' kind of climate advisory team. We're
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
help them identify how do we fit into your sustainability plan, and we'll always counsel customers,
Sure.
okay, where's your carbon reduction happening? How are you going, what are your remaining emissions? And let's
Sure.
talk about how we're going to address those with carbon offsets. And then we get into the question of, what are sustainability goals that you want to influence through your carbon offset purchase? Would you,
Interesting. Yeah.
let's say if you're a grocery store and there's a lot of food waste, you might want to fund landfill gas capture because all that
Yep.
methane coming off landfills. So we
Absolutely.
really try to create something that companies and people are just proud to talk about because it means something to them.
No, I love where you're going with that. I mean, you kind of get in, you really try to understand kind of who they are and what makes them tick, obviously, right? Get a real basis for how they operate. But I love the fact you kind of align. I mean, it makes sense, but align with what would make sense to that particular audience. And I think and that's a lot of it too. Talking about it, being proud of it, and kind of understanding it. Having someone within we'll call it the grocery, understand that, yes, methane does come out of the landfills. We capture that, we can sequester it, et cetera. They can at least get their mind around it. I think, I mean, from the whole buy-in to the whole, word of mouth, it's just a win across the board. So yeah, I mean, that's obviously the smart way to go about it. You're obviously executing. That's really fantastic. How big are the projects? Do they vary in size depending on how much a client, let's just, has to invest, right? Some companies are bigger than others.
Yeah. And you make a good point. Investment, and an analogy when it comes to, there are different ways to invest in a carbon credit project, but analogy I use a lot is like apples. It's almost like an apple orchard.
Okay.
Your carbon credits are your apples. You go to the grocery store and
Uh,
you don't give someone a dollar and say, hey, I'd like you to go grow me an apple. Those orchards have grown their apples and they want somebody to buy those so they can
right.
continue to operate. And so
Exactly.
for us, buying just a single carbon credit is an investment in a project, and that is what
Okay.
keeps those projects operating.
I got you.
Um, but to your point, some of these projects are massive, and they require a large number of customers buying a lot of carbon credits to keep going.
Sure.
It's in the industry. Most of it is done on a spot basis or right away. Hey, I have a carbon footprint of 5,000 tons. I need to buy 5,000 credits. But we are
Right.
definitely, the industry is growing into multi-year contracts for large companies who say, I really care about this project and I want to make a sustained commitment to that.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. So, I mean, how do you, the other thing that comes in my mind too is there some vetting of the technology that goes on in terms of, I mean, this is, it's kind of like it's a bench test or we're still early stage or kind of high risk. Like you know what I mean? Like I almost see it too in some ways on buying, multifamily properties in a way. I mean, it's a $10 million property. You get a bunch of people to put in 100 grand and, and then in kind of a crude way, you're able to do what you're able to do based on getting everybody. But I would say at the same time, it's like, well, what are we buying? Is this class A real estate? Is it class D? Are these people, going to shoot me if I try to collect the rent? Are they going to pay on time? I mean, where are we in the safety spectrum in terms of my return on my investment, both economically and physically, right? Where are we at? So
Yeah.
is there some of that going on too? I can imagine.
Oh, that's a great question and good analogy too. And the interesting thing is this industry has grown organically out of the need, right? Just it's that question of how do we stimulate the financing of carbon reduction and voluntary
Right.
markets originated. We saw the registries and all this voluntary activity pop up over 20 years, and it was good. It created a baseline. But the last 3 years have been really kind of transformational for this industry,
Okay.
and I think most people know the industry, like anything in the clean tech space, has gone through a lot of some scrutiny and a lot of questions about is it effective. And I think what's been really healthy about that is we have come out now that has stimulated some new things that have really taken it to the net. One of those is there's now an independent global governance body for quality. So there
Oh,
is a body that basically says, I am going to look at every single carbon credit registry and project type, and I am going to determine if it is a high integrity carbon credit project. And the industry is
nice.
going to move in that direction. And we just
Okay.
saw the U.S. administration a couple weeks ago announce what is basically very aligned with that, saying, "Hey, we are putting our full weight behind the growth of this industry, and we believe that the principles of quality that this governing body is putting out there, that's what we need." And so I think to answer your question, the biggest thing is that global governance that gets the whole industry aligned on quality, and that's the biggest, most important thing we need to really scale this.
That's huge. I mean, otherwise, it just everything stays very subjective, right? You're putting
That's
more
right.
of the objectivity into it. It's and probably easier for someone too that doesn't understand anything to enter into the space because there's kind of guardrails. You feel kind of safe, like it's not just Bob telling me, "Hey, this is a winner, man. This is let's give it a go," and we really have no idea. And you think that's kind of the prime driver, you would say, huh, for the last 3 years of where you've seen the interest level really grow and gain some traction. You think that's the primary driver?
Well, I think there's a theme that I've seen happening over the past 5 years, and that is what was voluntary is becoming regulated.
Okay.
And I think we've seen that happen in stages. I think the biggest one you look at in the EU and most recently the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission announcing rules that companies are going to have to start reporting their carbon emissions and in their with their
Yeah.
financial filings. And when you do that, you're basically disclosing a risk to the business that you have
Yeah.
to talk about how are you mitigating that risk.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we are seeing governments start to regulate, climate disclosure, climate transparency, and I think that's going to stimulate a lot of climate action that maybe wasn't happening right now.
Sure.
You have everything's being done on a voluntary basis by companies that are taking the initiative.
Yeah.
You get everybody there with rules like that. So I do think another theme is that voluntary ultimately kind of becomes regulated a little bit.
I had that conversation in a similar vein with a previous guest on the podcast too. How far do you go from voluntary to full mandate? And that everybody's going to weigh in on a different point on the curve, right? And yeah, it's you want you want companies, you want people to do the right thing for the right reason, and hopefully most do, but sometimes you have to give them a little tug to let them know that you're kind of serious, right? I know I kind of think of it just like with the police, right? It'd be great if we could just leave everything unlocked all the time. However, there are those individuals that will take what they can get for free and illegally. So you have to have some enforcement. Where do you feel like the sweet spot is? I mean, as far as full mandated regulation is concerned, more voluntary. Where do you think you'd like it to be? I mean, ultimately, where's the sweet spot for you?
Yeah, that's a big question. I mean, I think what we've done, I think the step we've taken now, what I think the regulations have done is they're not necessarily mandating action, but they are mandating transparency. It is, we're not going
Okay.
to tell you what to do and how to do it, but
Okay.
we're going to make sure everybody knows what you're doing, or not doing. And so we see those SEC disclosures are going to clearly show, what is your climate risk? What is the if I'm an
Right.
investor, should I be worried about your carbon footprint and what you're doing about it? And
Absolutely.
and we even see in consumer regulation a lot of rules about you can't. There are now some new regulations that I think are really healthy too about if you're going to make sustainability claims, you have got
Right.
to be crisp and transparent because
Mm,
any person on the street won't be able to tell the difference between carbon neutral and net zero and
yeah.
climate positive. And so I think what we've done is just created good consistency and transparency. And I think the goal is to let the markets then drive action because people will now see and know what's behind the curtain.
Well, it's interesting you went down that path. That was kind of, I think, where we ended up on that previous show I was telling you about. Was really you want to give it enough structure that the markets will decide. And I like you. I think that's a very healthy place to be. One of the concerns I have, I want you to weigh in on this though too, is companies that are let's call it how do I want to say it? Retail facing, very sensitive to what the retail customer thinks. Right, retail shopping is highly emotive in a lot of ways, and so getting your message out to your ideal customer in that market, I think is, you live or die by that in a lot of ways. And so I was reminded the other day, I was drinking a bottle of water. I just grabbed one off the shelf. It happened to be from like Hawaii and, like the whole back panel. I mean, basically carbon neutral, world positive. You're the best person in the world for buying this. As a matter of fact, you should pat yourself on the back. You're wonderful. You're great. I mean, you should get an award really for walking out of the store with this today. I mean, I just felt so good about myself. I'm like, man, I'm just a good person. So retail facing. Now, when you move to the other side of the spectrum, right? When you move to businesses that are harder to decarbonize, that are not, let's call retail facing, those are the ones that I think ultimately you've got to get the movement from because they're the heaviest polluters. And those are the ones that are precisely don't, I mean, let's be honest, they're not retail facing. So they're looking at the bottom line. They don't have a lot of scrutiny. And so it's almost like I feel like it's the bottom of the iceberg that you've got to attack, but it's the one nobody sees. How do you get that audience in some ways to on board? And I think maybe you've talked a little bit about that, but do you think that's part of where the biggest opportunity is? It's for those people, it's not the retail folks.
Yeah, I think that is definitely, to your point, heavy industry is the hardest to decarbonize and has the biggest carbon footprint. And
Yeah, exactly.
um,
Yeah.
and that's going to be very challenging. But what we do see is, I think there are two levers or two angles that create pressure. And one, if you're an
Yeah.
investor, and if you're a long-term investor in a business, do you feel confident that, hey, I'm investing in something that is not going to be a problem because of its climate risk? And so you're going to
Okay.
see investor pressure to do something. But one of the things we're increasingly seeing is the value chain pressure. So if I'm
Tell me that. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, if I'm a plastic parts manufacturer and I'm making it for Ford to make their automobiles,
Yeah.
Ford's telling me I've got to, and I'm submitting my RFP and I've got to show my sustainability plan and what am I doing about climate? And so we're seeing, I think value chain pressure is really starting to get heavy, and we're seeing a lot more requests than ever in terms of companies saying, "Hey, my clients are telling me I've got to do this, so I'm going to do it." And that is a very effective way to get companies taking action that might not have.
No, I think it's a great point that you raised. I hadn't really thought about it. I mean, I'm a stone's throw away from Walmart's headquarters. And so, I think in retail and, everybody around me
Yep.
works retail or they're a vendor, and they do put a lot of pressure on their supply chain in lots of different ways. But that's certainly one of them. If you want to sell through us, we have some requirements that you're going to have to fulfill. And they're able to work those things in, and people that I know that on the vendor community, Procter and Gamble and all these others, Unilever, Dial, et cetera. They talk about how they have to conform in order to, to basically maintain their position within, the world's largest retailer. But I hadn't really thought about it from your perspective, though, right? I mean, you're thinking of a parts manufacturer, a supplier behind the scenes, and if you told somebody the name, wouldn't know who you're talking about. But yet, it's on every Ford or F-150 truck or whatever the case is, right? It's part of your TV screen or whatever. That makes a lot of sense. The investor side too. I hadn't really thought about that. Where do you think it goes? Where do you think the space goes over the next, 3 to 5 years? I mean, we've seen a lot of movement here in the last 3 to 5, like you're talking about. What's to come? Or what do you want to see? What would you like to see? Where are the bottlenecks? What are the problems that you could fix right now? Right? All the world's
Yeah.
problems.
No, I will say it's pretty exciting. And I'll answer it a little broadly. I was really attracted to Terrapass because I spent a few years in solar technology development at DuPont, trying to reinvent the solar panel and
Right.
learn how hard it is to invent energy technologies. And then I had several years we're doing solar sales and installation with Green Mountain Energy, and saw
Yes.
even when the solar panels work right and you got them, it's so hard to find customers who are ready for that investment. And
Okay.
and ultimately, what I realized is we really need a solution that is accessible to everybody right now, and it is scalable. And so that's what I think voluntary carbon markets allow is, and I think that's what the world has gone through over the past couple of years, where I'd say for a few years we were really focused in the right way on we've got to eliminate emissions, number one priority, and that is still the priority. But what's happened in the past year or two is people are saying, yeah, we're just not eliminating emissions fast enough. We are falling behind. Scope 3 in particular is very hard to address. We need voluntary carbon markets to help us balance what we just can't get rid of. And that's what we see the Biden administration saying. That's what we see, a lot of leading sustainability organizations saying we need, we need to pair emission reduction on scope 1 and 2 with offsetting for scope 3, and that's the trajectory we're on right now. And what we're going to see, I think, coming forward is voluntary carbon markets, increasing transparency, increasing customization, like I talked about, to sustainability goals. We're going to see a lot of new technology entering the market, as this grows. Things like direct air capture, things like oil carbon. Really exciting on the technology development front. And then, I think regulation will creep in a little bit more as we go from voluntary to regulated. So, but I really think the shift that's happened in the past year towards recognizing that, hey, we need to unleash voluntary carbon markets to really scale carbon reduction short term is really where we're at right now.
Do you think we can catch up? I mean, are you concerned about the growth curve? And if we can't catch up, or it's going to be tricky, what is there a lever or a mechanism that you can pull that helps speed that up a little bit? I mean, I think about this in the power side on the demand curve. We're just so far behind, and it's tricky. I mean, we require more power every day. I mean, as you know, getting power out utility scale, then you got to get it interconnected. You got to get it transmitted. I mean, it's just fraught with challenges. It takes forever. So I'm curious on this side. What do you think? Can we catch it, and what do we need to do? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so it's going to be the same, the same challenge. I guess that I don't know if I have an answer on. Obviously, the curve to eliminate emissions is tough, right? We're having a hard time keeping pace with that. But
I agree.
But my hope is that we really have a scalable and responsive kind of voluntary carbon market that can really push towards. One of the things we're seeing is this push towards carbon removal, where you're actually, projects that are literally sucking carbon out of the air and storing it. I think we're going to see an increasing push towards carbon removal, paired with continued and rightly so a priority on pushing eliminating emissions. And I think that's the potential to catch up, and to keep us at least in a band that is not overly frightening.
Yeah, that's a good. I like that. Overly frightening. That's good. And I think you brought up a great point too on technology. I'm a big believer that you will see. I mean, you will see new technology. It's going to happen, and you hope one or two of them catches a gear and really becomes ubiquitous in the space. And I think that can do a lot to provide some catch up. And the hard thing is like, do I know what it is today? I don't. But nobody really does. Some of the stuff hasn't been invented yet, or some is an early stage invention. You don't know about it. But the nice helps me sleep a bit is that I know it's there. It's smart people are working on solving these challenging problems regularly, and a certain number of them will cross the finish line, and it will benefit everybody. So I believe that we're going to get there eventually. One of the things I want to talk about too, just kind of pivoting a little bit, is what's one of the best parts of your job? What do you really enjoy about the seat that you sit in? I mean, with the work that you do, I'm just kind of curious. What's maybe one of the big rushes?
Yeah, it's I think I think we touched on it a little bit. It really is when you find a way to bring the projects forward to people, it's really exciting. And when you can do that in a new way, I've had situations where maybe we're doing a lunch and learn with our team, and you just talk about what this project is doing, and you see people in the room, who are maybe from accounts payable, who are like, oh my gosh, we have got to support this. We have got to do more of this. And they just get so energized. And that's the kind of stuff where you're like, okay, we're doing something right here.
Yeah. It's the juice, isn't it? Yeah. It's that feed, that excitement. Someone's eyes light up. You're like, oh man, no, it's really, really sweet. One of the things too, I want to ask you about, just, is there a certain part of your day or your week that's kind of non-negotiable? I mean, one of the things that I like to talk about or ask is, with executives, I mean, there's 100 places we can go with this, but to kind of crystallize my thought, what is it that that kind of anchors your day or anchors your week? What part of you, professionally speaking, or even personally speaking too, there's just non-negotiables in your day or your week that really keep you focused, in balance, really, quite frankly. I mean, you can't work and no play and all play and no work. There's something in the middle. But what is it that's unique and sort of non-negotiable to you?
Yeah, one of the things the great thing about that I love about our leadership team at Terrapass is I think the non-negotiable is our principles, and we have the benefit of being a company that is going to be your family and yourself first, and work is second, and
Okay.
we're always going to help everybody on the team prioritize that. And so whether that be making sure you're getting your workouts in, making sure you're there for your daughter's elementary school graduation.
Sure.
So for us, it's finding ways to support each other, finding
Mhm.
ways to everybody has a different schedule for themselves on how to live a healthy lifestyle, and
Sure.
we're
Sure.
flexible enough that we're going to support people in how they work and how their life is healthy for them. And so those principles have been really great and creates a really good team.
I like what you're saying. I mean, as you know, the company I founded is a recruiting firm, and it's good to hear that there's that kind of clarity, within the organization. It's amazing sometimes the companies we talk to that I don't think have really sat down and thought that through very well. And it's unfortunate because I think some of the problems they struggle from are self-inflicted. And I think the companies that are very clear about, who we are and who we're not, we're not going to be the following. And quite frankly, that's genius, because if you're not that, then you won't attract that. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's important for obviously chemistry, and the success that you're going to see both in the times when, let's call it, things are on the easy side and when things are very difficult. And yeah, and everybody's got a sort of a different, what would you say, fulcrum. For some people, it is they got to get that workout in every day or they go insane, and that's cool. I like to work out. For some people, it's meditation. Some people, it's fill in the blank. But I think recognizing that, which you have, that your greatest asset will always be your people, and the synergistic effect of how they work together will really drive whether you dominate and you're successful in your niche.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're
Yeah.
we're a mission-based company. I mean, and
Yeah.
we, to your point,
Yeah.
it is reinforcing. We want people who care about our mission and who care
Mhm.
about more than just simple dollars and cents, and
Yeah.
that's really it just works. It works.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I love it. What's one of the questions I do like to ask too is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? Well, again, personal or professional, that you kind of come back to again and again. I'm always fascinated by what I hear when I ask this question.
Yeah, I think one of my favorites was when I had a kind of a mentor tell me just um, make sure you're always making yourself uncomfortable, doing something that makes you a little nervous. Just always stepping out of your comfort zone. I think that is one where, there are points in my career where things have been very comfortable, and gosh, it feels good, and I know what's going on, I know how it's all working, but it's that question of,
Yeah.
am I doing something that's pushing me a little bit? And one of the things I love about that comment too is,
Yeah.
to your point, to really do the things that you're proud of in life, you need to step into uncertainty a little bit, step into the
Mhm.
white space.
Yep.
And if you're doing it with smart people, you're going to figure it out. And all it takes is a little bit of courage to go do something that most people wouldn't do. So it's been
Yeah.
it's been a good one for me.
That's a great answer. It's kind of funny too. I was on a podcast this morning, and that question came up, and that's how I kind of answered it. And I tell my children the same thing. I'm like, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think you're right. I think that's where the big wins are, is when when it's unsettling. And you're right. It's nice. Yeah, when you got it gamed, you know where you're going. Like your two questions or two answers ahead of the guy next to you. It's like, oh, this is going to be fun, And but in some ways too, there's, I don't know, the rush from that's not that big either. It's taking on something a little big, a little scary, and but I think, quite frankly, would be indispensable for the work that you're doing. I mean, what you're doing is stepping out. I mean, you are the tip of the spear. You're on the forefront. You're looking at things that have never been done in an emerging market that's not mature. and you got to kind of figure it out as you go. And that's just pond you're swimming in, but super exciting. I mean, no 2 days are going to be the same.
Yeah, there may be, you may have, one or two nights along the way where you're having trouble sleeping, but it's all part of the fun.
No, that is awesome. That is awesome. I love it. I love it. No, I've enjoyed having you on today. This has been a lot of fun. Any other thoughts you got? Anything you want to hit on before we wind it down? Any takes?
No, I think we hit on the ones of really just that advice of people just making sure they're listening to themselves as they're going through their career and understanding what's making them happy and looking inwardly. And I think that's key, being persistent to that. So that was the kind of my big advice related to that.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. I think it's great advice. I think it's great for, folks coming out of school, but also I think, people 5-10 years in their career that find themselves stuck. And we get that as a recruiting company. It's like, why am I not being considered for this role? Or why am I not, money, opportunity? And it's like, well, I got to tell you, it's because you've been wandering. You've been a bit aimless. You really haven't been purpose driven in what you want, where you fit, and the path to really get there. And oftentimes, quite frankly, Sam, you nailed it. You were just unwilling to get uncomfortable. And that's okay. There's plenty of jobs that are out there that, but they just don't typically come with the rewards that if you're willing to take the risk. It's, and that's just what it is. That's a great comment. I appreciate that. What's the best way to get in touch with you? If someone wants to follow up after seeing your show, how would they hit you? LinkedIn, or do you have another path, or what would be good?
No, LinkedIn's great. It definitely, I try to check it, at least a couple times a week. So, anybody hit me up on LinkedIn. Love supporting people's career path and questions about where, if they are interested in Terrapass or just my journey, I'm happy to help.
Wonderful. I appreciate that. Well, again, thanks a million. I loved having you on today. It was a lot of fun. I learned some good stuff, got some good reinforcement, get uncomfortable, be uncomfortable, enjoy the ride. So, thanks for coming on today, Sam. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate the opportunity and really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much. And so I just want to say, everybody else out there, remember, there's a genius inside of all of us. It's up to you to discover it, harness it, and share it with the world. So the question always is the same. What's your inner genius?
This is the Padua Podcast Network. PaduaPodcastNetwork.com.